the science of reading. Welcome, everybody. In this presentation, we will review a few images that further illustrate concepts related to the science of reading. We will dig deeper into these ideas in other presentations, but feel free to search for articles on the web. First is the simple view of reading. The simple view of reading says that comprehension is the product of decoding and language comprehension. So this means that if you are very, very good at decoding, but yet your language comprehension is weak, your reading comprehension is weak. The flip side, if your decoding is weak, but you can understand language, your reading comprehension will also suffer. So this is a multiplication equation, which is so important that we're able to support students in gaining strengths in both. Scarborough's reading rope takes that simple view of reading and kind of expands on it a little bit. So the red part is language comprehension. This includes background knowledge, facts, concepts, vocabulary, the breadth and precision, language structures, the syntax, semantics, verbal reasoning, things like metaphor, making inferences, and literacy knowledge, like print concepts, genres. Then we have the word recognition. So the first and foremost is the phonological awareness. This includes your ability to separate words into syllables and to have phonemic awareness. Then this will help you with your decoding, developing the alphabetic principles and spelling sound correspondences. And then sight word recognition. When these strands are all woven together, then we can have a skilled reader. The four-part processing model sort of explains how we acquire language. So meaning is here at the center. That's the whole purpose of language and reading, is to understand what we're trying to communicate. Then on the left we have phonological. Phonological has to do with sounds. Then on the other side we have orthographic. Orthographic has to do with things that are written down. And everything is sort of based on context. In the middle, we have the phonics. So phonics is you're going through two sort of things. You're going through the phonological and the orthographic. And keep in mind that in English, it's a phonemic language, but it's also a language based on morphology, especially when we think about all of the different languages that are made up with just English. We got French, we got Greek, we got Latin. Then if we take the bottom sort of part of the four-part processor where we had the phonology and the orthography, Dr. Tolman created this hourglass figure, which is really important. So she took those two parts at the bottom and kind of flipped them over to make an hourglass. And so the first part talks about how everything is based on sound. Young students are able to break apart words into syllables. They're able to identify alliteration and then separate words into onset and rhyme. However, we have to be able to dig a little deeper. Then students are supposed to be able to phoneme blend and segment. Then advanced levels are phoneme deletion, substitution, and reversals. So we start with big unit sentences, and then we get down to the nitty-gritty so that we're able to then create a one-to-one correspondence. And this essentially is the alphabetic principle. So we're learning that we're able to talk, and then in order to represent those speech patterns, we've got to match them up with letters. And so we start with graphemes, then digraphs, trigraphs, vowel teams, blends, you do families, you do syllable work, morphemes, etymology, and that becomes the orthography part. And in English, it's very, very difficult. It's one of the most difficult languages to learn how to spell because of what we mentioned earlier. There are Greek influences, Latin influences, and all of that kind of plays into a role. And it makes spelling a little bit difficult. But like with everything, things can be definitely practiced. Next, this is really important, and I don't hear too much talk about it, but we really got to get into it. So this is Ehri's Phases of Word Reading Development, and it's a continuum. So you start with pre-alphabetic, then early alphabetic, later alphabetic, and the consolidated alphabetic. So this sort of continuum it is not dependent on your age. So it's not like, oh, you start off in kindergarten and you're in a pre-alphabetic and then you get into the consolidated phase when you're like a teenager. No, this is all based on the instruction that you receive. And so for students who may have dyslexia, unless they are explicitly taught how to go through each stage, they will not move on to the next one. And this is why we have so many students that are struggling to read, because it was assumed by a lot of people in education that kids will grow out of things or they'll understand things as they get older. So this is not accurate. We have to explicitly teach students about everything that we talked about on the hourglass figure. So for most people, it comes naturally. Like for 80% of us, like these skills come naturally to us with structured literacy. But then you're going to have this band of students at the dyslexic band of students that they're going to need a little bit more support in acquiring the skills needed in order to get to the goal, which is the consolidated alphabetic phase, where we are able to read words and spell words. And this may seem like a lot of new information, but reading scientists have been studying the brain for over 86 years. So Samuel Orton and Anna Gillingham revolutionized the way reading was taught to many children. Also, we have Patricia Lindemood and Nancy Bell, who developed their methods in the 1970s. So everyone's heard of Orton Gillingham. I'm not sure if many people have heard of Lindemood Bell, but they are excellent programs. And this link kind of compares both of them. LIPS does do a lot more with the phonology of language and really making sure that students have auditory discrimination so that they're able to hear each sound that we're talking about, so that then, like Dr. Tolman said, you can build that one-to-one correspondence. So now in 2023, public school students and educators will be able to reap the benefits of this incredible work by the psychiatrists, reading specialists, speech and language pathologists, and teachers that have been accomplished. And so the bottom line is students need well-developed phonemic awareness and intensive phonics instruction to become strong readers and spellers. Over here we have some important videos. One is called, Can We Afford to Ignore the Science of Reading? I know that there are still lots of folks out there that believed in whole language or balanced literacy. This video kind of sheds some light as to why we've really got to make the shift. This is by an author, Read or Else. It just talks about the tragedies that occur when students don't learn how to read. Then this one kind of talks about the bias that we have, especially if you speak a language like Spanish or Spanglish or African American English. There's a lot of bias. There's a lot of negative attitudes associated with the way many of us speak. And so that kind of talks about why we should try to move away from having these biases and accepting all of the differences in our linguistic repertoires that our students have. This video is very old. It's from The Cosby Show and just talks about how Theo had dyslexia. And it's still something that's not very widely spoken about in school, but again, we need to start making the shift. And then another video really talking about what is dyslexia. Literacy liberates. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned for the next video.